Indeed, 35 years ago I graduated as a student from the Technical University at Delft. It seems like yesterday. And I'm going to show you what we produced in that time, since '79. And I will not only talk about steel, because it's about architecture, and we use steel a lot, of course, but it's because of a reason, and we use concrete too. I won't show those projects today, of course, but when we started, we took part in a competition, and the competition prize was winning a piece of ground for 5 years. So what you had to do was make a structure, a house, that could be removed after 5 years. It was a very nice project because we tried to keep it as light as possible, and we tried to make it of as many prefabricated components as possible, so we could build it ourselves and have some practice experience in our first project. So here we started. The idea was, of course, because we had to remove it, was not to use foundations. So we used these flat concrete slabs. We made an adjustable section on it, and we built this space frame that we designed together with a factory. We then added all other materials that were brought by truck to the site. And the nice thing about this project and this experiment was that it was all about weight and about using as less material as possible, because we had to lift it ourselves and we had to remove it after 5 years. That was the idea. So the special thing here is, for instance, that glass is used as a structural element, so the roof rests on the glass, and the house has no columns, but it has steel tension cables to assure that the wind will not blow the roof away when the wind gets over. This was this is the actual situation of the house. It's still there, of course, because these things are temporarily, but when they're okay, they're allowed to stay for a longer time. The building is also expanded in the same way. And it's still there. The glass still holds the roof. The roof didn't blow away, and it was a very good practice for us to be able to design in a way that you use as less material as possible. That's very actual in this world at the moment with the whole sustainability issue. And it's strange that in our first years we did more on that even than you might say that we do now. After this house, we made some other smaller housing projects with the same attitude of using as less material and having as much interaction between inside and outside, and have the architecture not be in the way of what you want to do and what you want to see. This went on for a couple of years, and we tried to get better and better in making spaces and having this relationship for inside and outside. Use all materials in the most secure and pure way, without spending our time on issues like form or things. So what we always try to do is take the program of our clients very serious, see what's the best thing that we can get out of it, make a concept, and then really put all our time in how we build that concept. A lot of architecture is conceptually very good, but built very badly. And in terms of sustainability, that's the wrong way. So we feel more like a kind of engineers, and architects are partly engineers, and we think that's important. So you can have a nice idea, but you have to be able to realize it. And it's not only about steel, it's about integration in old cities. There was a lot of talk here about urbanization. Our country, the Netherlands, is a small country with a lot of people, and you can call it almost completely urbanized. So the whole idea of people going from outside the cities to the city, we've had that on a smaller scale, but you can say that we are in a stage now that we have to renew and make better our cities and make more use of our cities. And that's thing that's going to happen here and is happening at the moment here also very much. You have to make use of the existing infrastructure of cities, renew them, better use them, build more square meters at one spot instead of sprawling all around the country, and that's also will be very important. We made some of these projects in the beginning and we tried to get better and better in using less material. This is an exhibition pavilion for modern art, where the idea was to just make a little skin around the works of art that could not completely stand outside and be blown away by the wind again. So the strange thing is we used glass, but we used steel girders to make it look even lighter. So we used a heavier material to have a lighter pavilion. And it was a nice project because this is already more than 30 years ago, and by that time this use of glass was quite spectacular. And I had to guide the Queen through this pavilion, and I had to come up with certificates from the United States and Germany to show that it was safe to work under this glass roof. While nowadays, of course, that's all very common to all of us. Then, because of this kind of engineering attitude, we were also allowed to say something more about cities. So this was a project, a town planning project in the city of The Hague, where a sunken highway split the city into two halves. It's on the border of the city, where the city goes over in a park. And this is the town planning scheme we made, and because we have no space in our country, these were the first projects where we put buildings on top of highways and also used the buildings as a kind of gate to mark, and it's the building in the middle that I'll just show you, to use the building as a kind of city gate in a new way, built over the infrastructure. So what you see is here a building. It's actually a kind of bridge structure that only can have its foundation piles in a 1 meter and 1.5 meter section on two sides of the highway. It spans the highway getting in and out our government city, The Hague, and the rest of the structure is made so light that the two sides of the building that look out over the highway are as open as possible. And then steel is a nice material to work with, because you can, with very thin measurements, you can make a very stiff, open structure. So basically, as an engineer, you construct, like a bridge, you construct this building to get as much open view to the outside world as possible. And the nice and interesting thing of building it was that these kind of structures tend to move. When you build them from the ground on, they get heavier and heavier, so there gets more and more load to the structure and to the foundation of the bottom part. So we had to develop this building in a way that all the structural parts could move until the top of the building was reached. So you see that this outside steel structure has all kinds of joints that could move during the building process of the building. So that was an extra challenge as an engineer to do that. Well, by this kind of engineering approach, people asked us then, when we were, our office was there for 8 years, and then they came to us and they asked if we wanted to enlarge the airport of Amsterdam. We were with 7 people at the time, and we said no. Because I don't know why they asked us, actually, but we said, well, if you hire us, we have hardly been in a plane in our life. We are with 7 people, we're going to work like hell with 7 people to do this airport, and then after 3 months you say, well, this is ridiculous letting you do this, and we will have no work at all. So we said, if we can work together with all the people that you already have, because their idea was, we're going to start from scratch all over again. We sent all our consultants away. We're going to take some young people and we're going to do it in an innovative way. Then we said, well, that's ridiculous. We have to use the experience, because the airport at that time was a very good airport with a lot of international flights going in and out, like today, because the Netherlands is a kind of hub that divides planes to all over the world. Not too many come to our country. Most, 65% of the people that visit our airport are people that pass through to another airport. We are in trade in the Netherlands. We are in trade. So in the 60s, this was a very good airport, and they wanted to draw out all the people that did this airport. And we said, no, if we can work together with them, we will do it. We will be the main architects, but we will work together with all these specialists. And we are very glad that we did that at that time, because nowadays everything is about sharing knowledge and working together. Much less the idea of one architect with one pencil doing everything. So we started to learn quite early to work in teams and to work on difficult projects in a way that teams were used. So you see here, the question they asked us was, how shall we double the airport within 6 years? They had 15 million people, passengers, and they said, what shall we do to double it? No one knew the answer. So we all said, let's double everything. We doubled the buildings, we doubled the runways, we doubled the parking space, we doubled the offices, we doubled the towers. And that's how we did it, basically. Don't think too much, just do it. Make an idea. This was our office. This was the biggest building we did. And in the back is the model of the terminal building we had built that way. So that was quite, for us, also a challenge. So this was our office at the time. We used this carton drawing paper rolls to build models of the columns that we were trying to do. We lay on the ground to see what the scale would be, because we never did it before. And so you just do it and you don't get excited about it. And here you see the end result. We used the roof of the terminal to guide the people from land side to air side. And we made the roof in a way that the daylight and the artificial light at night comes from the same spot. So you will always be in the same space. A lot of airport spaces are completely different by daytime and by nighttime. So when you're at night, you're in a completely artificial world, just follow the signing, and at daytime, sometimes you have some orientation. What we tried in the airport was to have the orientation as good as possible, see where you were walking, see from as soon as possible the planes that you were going to, and design as less obstacles as possible in the way you're doing it, because there are a lot of obstacles when you have such a busy airport. Here you see the roof structure, where you see the light from the top, and the light, the artificial light at night is also included. Very light lounge spaces and somewhat darker commercial spaces. Of course, this airport changed from this image you saw from the 60s. That was a really simple airport, like the ones you see still all over the world. But now our Schiphol airport in Amsterdam is a city. Only houses are not there, but for the rest, everything you find in a city is now on this airport. There's a hospital, there's a hotel, there's a casino, there's a library, there's a museum. Everything is in the. So that is very interesting to work on, and to see also on this scale this kind of urbanization of an airport. For instance, the other change we made was that there was a train station in front of the terminal building, and that was like this. This was already our terminal under construction, but there was a separate train station and a separate airplane station. So what we did is integrate those, made a square in front of the terminal, and under the roof, that is also a park, we created the new plaza, Schiphol, where you meet. And under the plaza, you could go to the trains. And nowadays there's a very good connection, of course, between all kinds of public transport, buses, trams, trains, and bicycles, also in the Netherlands a lot, to go to the airport. And we used the different directions of the site, the triangular site, to participate the steel structure to make the cover of this hall. The red and white artwork is the meeting point in the station. So everything is made that you have a clear idea of what you're going to do and what you want to do, and not have the building in the way. We're still working on it. We've done it for almost 30 years now. It's great work to do something new every day and still work on a structure that the concept was basically made 30 years ago, and we still work on the same framework. We change it, adjust it every day a little bit. So for instance, this second control tower, because they had an extra runway, used to be a small tower, and now it is a tower where people also control the air traffic. So we had to build an elevator going to the top. So we added a small steel structure to make the elevator to the top. So it was a kind of reuse and renew of already existing structures that we did at that time. We made the World Trade Center. It's all based on flow and all based on a transparent space and being able to see where you go to. While in the meantime, it is this big city that you have to orientate. It's just like a normal city where you want to know which place, which street, which park is where and how you get there in an easy way. Of course, the nice span of the structural material is used in this great big freight stations. And because of this work in this infrastructure, we were asked to also think of some bridges in the Netherlands. So this, for instance, is the bridge of the new high-speed line that connects Amsterdam to Paris. And it's the last bridge before you leave the country and go into Belgium. It's over almost 1 kilometer wide water, the Hollands Diep, and it was next to an old train station. So where the structural elements in the water could be was given, because they had to be in the same position as the existing bridge, so the ships could pass through easily. And the idea was that we would have the train just race over the top of the old bridge. So you get a very nice bow, and in 13 seconds the trains just go over it. They come, just before they reach this spot, they come out of a tunnel and you just jump over the river. And you go with your train into Belgium, into France. You see here the old structure on the right side. And this structure that just raises a bit above it. Also, again, to experience the landscape and to experience the wide views over this water. It was constructed again, of course, in as much prefabricated parts as possible, not to disturb the ship traffic that was there. And we made a little facet in the. If you see this interior part of the triangle that's open, you see that the surface is not completely flat. We just made one little facet face in it, so that at night time, by just having one piece of light, you get this very nice triangular shaped lamp that makes the bridge more elegant. So it's very big, heavy steel, but it's detailed in a way with very simple means to get this elegant bridge. We try to repeat that kind of structural idea of the triangles, of course, with bicycle and footpath bridges in an extension of Amsterdam. Also to be able to make this kind of light jump over the water. There's a series of 5 bridges that connects the city with Amsterdam. We also have birds, but not as many species as you have here. And they like to sit on these elegant bridges. The nice thing about bridges, of course, is that ships go under through them. So you don't only design a bridge from the upside, but you also design a bridge from the underside, because it's nice to go under a bridge. So detailing is what it's all about. Some competition projects that we didn't win, well, I think that when we don't use triangles and try to be even more elegant, we don't win. So later we said, well, let's stick to this simple engineering principles. This was a footbridge for Linz in Austria, where we tried to incorporate the roads to the bridge with the actual structure. And this was a proposal for a bridge next to the new World Finance headquarters, the World Bank building, where we had a banded road, so a curved road, and tried to find a structure that you really experience when you go through them. So the bridge really moves with you when you cross the water. Unfortunately, we did not win this one. So as I said, in the Netherlands, we are now currently in a phase of recreating and renewing our cities. So we use what we have and we make it better, and we make better use of it. So this is an example of a work building in the harbor of Rotterdam. It's a nice functionalist building from the 40s by Van den Broek and Bakema. And the special thing here is that the whole facade is of concrete. Also the window frames are made of very thin concrete. We restored this building on the outside completely. We made insulation on the inside, but we kept the appearance of the building just like it has ever been. Because we are reusing, and you will do that here, and you are doing that here also, is you will reuse the building and show the history of the place, but reuse it and make much more better use of the buildings than you did in the past. That sometimes it's necessary to destroy parts of this building, because this is a building that was a work building for ship components in the beginning, and now it's a building where on every level there's a different function. There's a museum on the ground floor, there's offices, and there's restaurants in this building. So we had to make vertical combinations and new shafts in the building. So you have a main entrance where you split all your public. You have a exhibition space for different exhibitions all time. You see these structural, very heavy mushroom columns that you see here. The building was stripped completely, just isolated well. It's next to where all the big ships land. And it has to do with a lot of scale issues and reuse the character of this old building, but adding a new life to it. That was not enough. During the construction process of this building, our client said, well, this is such a heavy structure, why not build some extra square meters on top of it? And also because around this building, in the meantime, a lot of very high-rise buildings are constructed. So this is an old pier in the harbor of Rotterdam, where the ocean liners that went to the United States would go from the Netherlands to New York, the Holland-Amerika line. And this is now a completely new center in the middle of Rotterdam. So because they wanted more square meters on the existing structure, we made this little kind of eye-box plot on top of it. And also the nice thing for us was to design a building that also the roof was as a fifth facade, because all these high buildings around it would look on top of this building. So what we did again is try, that was very nice after all these years again, to try to conceive this building as light as possible and as many prefabricated products as possible, so they could take them to the site and just screw them together and build it on top of the existing structure. So a very slender, nice steel structure, easy to build with light material on top of the roof of this building, because you had no building site. You just lift the things and you bolt them together. The form, of course, the shape has to do with these boat roofs that are in front of it, of the ship terminals that were there. So the end of the building was finalized with that. And then it was detailed in a way that you really see that this building has rounded off ends and corners. It's next to the Swan Bridge of Ben van Berkel, which is now really a landmark for Rotterdam. And the Rotterdam, the new building of OME by Rem Koolhaas is built next to this building. But also a kind of practice or experiment in how you can reuse and recreate extra space and extra functions in combination with an old building. The same happens with the Amsterdam Congress and Convention Center. It was a complete structure built in two phases. The one on the right side is from the 60s. It's now a monument. It's a really functional system of exhibition halls. And on the left side, in the 70s and 80s, the second phase was added. The problem of the complex was that it was really two worlds, and the connection between the two was not good enough. So what we did is add in the middle a kind of combination building that made on the right, on the first floor, the connection between the two sections of the Congress and the Exhibition Center, but also added some extra functions that were needed. So this building consists of 4 programmatic parts. It's the entrance part to the whole site. It is exhibition space and banqueting space. It is meeting space and meeting rooms, and it is office space, partly by the convention center itself and partly for rent during events. So what we tried is to make again orientation and openness as a main concept. This is the entrance space, and we tried to show that this is a building with 4 functions in it, and that they're together form one building. So the theme we used here was that we have a continuous flow of walls and floor space. That's one ongoing line, and then it was covered with one ongoing material. So you get a building that has not a backside and a front side, but it's a continuous flow of spaces, and it shows that this is a combination building. So here you see this line that's also shown in the facade on the side of the building, open to the south and to the west, where you can view from the top floors. You can see the airport. A lot of people from this building come from the airport to the exhibition center. In this bottom part on this slide, you see the meeting rooms, so they have a bit of a different height in the floors. And then on the right side, you have, and that's now here in the front, you have this big 2,500 square meter exhibition banqueting hall. And to make this idea clear, we covered the whole facade and all these floors all the way around with a very thin sheet of stainless steel, which was used in a sandwich material with aluminium and an artificial product in between, to make this really ongoing sheet. It was perforated to be able to have LED lighting installed in the facade later, and to be able to project movies or to show movies from the building, which is, as an exhibition building, not a bad idea. Of course, that at that time proved to be still too expensive, and we only made the facade with the little holes in it. You see the beams that are here acoustically covered for a large span of this space, and the LED lighting was used in the inside to create, with every new exhibition, a new atmosphere and a new, well, you can use it in every way you want, this building. You see here this sheet going on and on, covering all these spaces. The same idea of a volume of a building covered with one facade was for a small company outside, just outside Amsterdam, that would make water pumps. So we made this building more or less in the form of a pump that's really put into the landscape just outside Amsterdam, and also the stair of the building was made in the way that it looks like a part of these pumps. So sometimes we try to be a bit more romantic and be a bit more on the form. And then, of course, this material can be used very easily to shape it in every way that you want to shape it. It's basically a normal workspace inside, but on the outside it's rather, well, what shall I call it, a building. The idea of having a shed in which several things can happen was also worked out further in two music buildings. In the Netherlands, I grew up as the first generation with pop music as a serious business, and at the moment in our country, all big cities have a venue for pop music, smaller or bigger. But in the early days, you had to have a sports hall, or you had to have a swimming pool. Now, more or less, you have to have a building for pop music in the Netherlands, which is nice. On the other hand, it's a kind of institutionalizing something that maybe should not be institutionalized. But it's all about the music, of course, and the experience that you have when people perform for you. So it's nice that you construct something, but in the end, it's all for the experience of the performer. So what we try to do in these buildings is make architecture that is interesting before and after the performance, and that is built so well that acoustically and in terms of noise control, the building works optimal. So we don't try to make a beautiful inside of a concert hall, because it's about the performer and about what he wants to set up that night. So they're basically kind of black box theaters inside, but on the outside you can design a building that when going in you have a nice time, and going out you have a nice time, and in between it's all about the process and the music you're doing. So this building in Hengelo consists mainly of two concrete boxes, so the sound of the music doesn't come out, and inside you can have the best acoustic atmosphere you have. And there's just built a shed around it, and the space in between the concrete boxes and the space around it is the lobby space and is the restaurant space of the building. So you see that here at night, when you come to the building, you already see that you're going to have a nice night. Also here, the colored lighting that can be adjusted to the type of performer. So when we have a singer-songwriter, it will be very dimmed light, and when we have a rock band, it will do like that. And the color of the light, of course, can also be changed according to the guys that are over there. You see also that just like we use the structural elements of the structure of the shed, we do that also with the technical aspects of this building. So here you see the columns, the very heavy columns, and the steel blocks with rubber in between them to damp the sound and the movement of the music. So we made that kind of detail into a very important detail of the building. The rest is pure, simple concrete, and by lighting it with the LED lighting at night, it gets a real pleasantful event. And for the rest, it's just work and detailing and see to it that all the details of the structure, also when they're not straight, fit into each other. And that's nice for an architect. Just to figure it out how it works is very nice. And then in between the boxes you go up and down, and inside it's simple music, and every night different light conditions and different performances. We did that a bit later, and it was opened a year ago in the Ziggo Dome in Amsterdam, which is a concert venue for 18,000 people at the time. And of course the idea was that because this is a venue that is in between a stadium and a smaller concert hall, 18,000 people is a lot, that you want to make this space so that you feel like you're in a concert hall of 1,200 people instead of 1,800. So again here, what we did is just make an acoustically brilliant box. We even used the stands that you sit on as acoustic material, so we made a special design of the seats that made even the acoustics better. And the whole, this time it worked, because it's cheaper now. The whole facade of the building is a LED facade that shows films of the guys that will be playing there. And for the rest, it's next to the Amsterdam Arena, or Ajax football club place, so they can use the parking spaces together. And it's also a way of making this building, which is quite smaller than the buildings around it, is at night even more big than those buildings because of this LED lighting that we have on site. You see here the simple box of concrete with the space frame roof around it, and that's to have no columns in the space at all, have as many well-placed seats in this arena around it, so that when you have your concert after having seen on the facade what's inside, you will have a concert venue that can be used optimally. You can hang everything on the roof. Every artist, sometimes they had Madonna, and 2 days later they had Barbara Streisand, and 2 days later they had real young people. So they can change the venue every time. Of course, they use a lot of old performers because they can get 18,000 people at once, and the younger bands have to do some more years before they are here. But then at night when the concert is on, it's really, because of hardly making architecture that you see, that you get the best experience. So I always say, sometimes it's better to be a kind of engineer and solve a problem than be the architect that's in the way and spoils it for the artist. So that's the way we do. The last projects that I will show you, and I will go a bit deeper into that, are some railway stations that are in the center of our cities and that are really transforming the city and make them into much more places of not only going to a train, step out of the train and get out of it again, but they are really city centers that connect the old cities and make use of the city center much better than before. This is the situation of Utrecht. This is the most busy railway station in the Netherlands because it's in the middle of the Netherlands, so a lot of trains, again like by Schiphol, they split up from this station. You see the situation of about 4 years ago. On the left side you see the city that was kind of destroyed. The center of the city was destroyed by a lot of building in the 60s and 70s that people don't like nowadays anymore. So at the moment now, the blocks on the left are also stripped and being transformed in things that people like more. It's a big shopping center in the center, of course. Then you see all kinds of roofs that were built in separate times when the station got bigger and bigger. And we now have the possibility of making it into one coherent station atmosphere again. So what we do basically is we make one continuous roof, like in the airport, to guide the people under this roof to where they have to be with as much visibility of what's around them and inside as possible. It is a roof that consists of 3 waves, and the 3 waves are very functional. The middle wave is where the trains are, and the 2 waves on the sides is what on one side are the trams in the city side, and others are the buses that are going outside the city. So it's also a simple concept of a functional idea but by the scale of it and by the lightness of it, it will give the space, the atmosphere that gives you something extra above only going from A to B. Of course, there's also a lot of extra commercial activity in these spaces, and the connection with the city, with these blocks around it, they're also being revitalized at the moment, is very important. So here it's all, when you have the idea, it's about dealing this and detailing with these structures, to keep the light, the roof as light as possible, to have the form come out and not have the color or the material do it. These are 3D images that, because it's not finished, we are constructing this station right now. Parts of it are being realized at the moment, and it's a next phase for us in how to deal with scale, getting the right scale with the right size, as I can try to explain it. Also, when elements get bigger, it's nice to have nice detailing of the elements, to give them a certain scale and to see that you work with all your heart on this, and not just make straight beams and bolt them together because it's cheaper. Because these spaces in cities, the transfer points in the city are very important focus points in cities, because it's all about mobility. People are driving less in cars in the Netherlands because it's so full. It's much more a good idea to use inside the city your bikes and your buses, and you have the stations as very big transfer points where you also do your shopping and where you also can meet. So there's a lot of program in and out around the stations, and then you go out with the trains. In Europe, you take the high-speed trains. These stations that we work on are mainly for the transformation from the local train network to the high-speed network. So they are very important transfer points. We do 3 of these stations, maybe 4, and we try not to have them look all the same in every city. I will show you that in a way. So here you see the construction of this nice blanket that's over the people. Also the covering of the tracks with solar energy in the middle is on its way now. Den Haag Centraal is the government city. It's a complete different situation. It's also in the middle of the center of the city, but this is not an ongoing station, but it's an end station. And it is between all kinds of high-rise buildings. So there's so much dense building that you want space. So we used here the station not to cover the people only, but give them an opportunity to be on a kind of square where they're in the station. You see the situation here in the middle. On the top you see a small park in front of it. The high-rise building that I showed you in the beginning of the presentation is on the top right, on the highway that's a bit lowered in the city. And the station, you see that the tracks end in the station. In the 60s, this building was done. Again, a building of a form and an atmosphere that people at this moment don't like. So also there is a transformation possibility for this building. You see it here from the other side. This was the existing hall where the trains would end in the station. And what we do, that's a bit hard to see now. This was the section that we had before, with on the left a bus station lifted above the trains, where also the trams in another way crossed this. It's hard to see, and this is what we did. We took away some floors in the system and we raised the roof, and we made it into a kind of glass roof, so that you get much more space inside. You can look at all directions, and immediately when you come out of the train or out of the tram, you can orientate yourself to see in which way and direction you have to go. You see the glass rooms. When the station was built formerly, it was the highest building in the surrounding, and now it has all kinds of high rises, just like the work building in Rotterdam around it. So the roof and looking up is also much more important than it was before. So you see that the tram track is also now a recognizable piece of the system. These are images that we made before. The idea was also that it's on 4 sides as important. So sometimes you have stations, you have an inside and an outside, or a left side and a right side. Here, because you go to all sides, we tried to think of a diagonal system of the structure of the roof that is a kind of symbolic guiding your way to all these directions. And the roof was configured so that it can be opened when it gets too warm. It was a play of shadow also. The nice thing of being in a covered space that is more or less a plaza or outside is that you can see what happens with the weather around you, and then shading also comes into your mind, and the movement of the shade and the shade being different at all times of the day was a very important thing for us when we developed this thing. So we started building the tram track new, getting, and you see the light in the back, getting pieces out of the structure to get more light in the building. And here you see the roof. It's also still under construction, but it's very nice to see that the images and also the image that it produces are quite similar to what you want with it. The top of the roof, where people are making it waterproof, and you see these square elements that can open like a flower when it's getting too warm, and also when there's a fire, of course, inside. So you get it's a very simple idea, but by the scale of it and by the idea of it, it works well that you can see all the buildings around it, and you have a nice pattern above your head. Also, we used paint here that's more glossy than you normally would have in a construction site. So it's a kind of half interior architecture, half town planning because of the scale. And it's very interesting for us because we always try not to forget that we started with this small building that we produced ourselves. So in the big buildings, we don't try to forget the small scale, and when we do small projects, we don't want to be too small all over. So it's very nice to constantly think about scale and how a building will be used. So this is now from a couple of days ago, the roof, and if you still remember the 3D images, it is happily about what we thought it would be. Another station is Amsterdam Central Station, which is a very characteristic station with these vaulted roofs from the steam age even. What we did here is change the whole system of transport. We got rid of a lot of transport that was built in the years in the front of the station going to the city center. So we also here moved all the buses to the water side at the back of the station and made a new front to the station also at the water side. Amsterdam has a problem with this station, that the station is in between the city and the water. And we're trying to restore that, because also on the north side, on the other side of the river now, there's this new revitalization of Amsterdam North. And we try to make this station a two-phase station. So what we did is we took the same shape, which is from an engineering point a very simple shape, and it uses your strength of your structure in a very efficient way. So we added this vaulted roof at the back, and under this roof there is a new bus station on the same level as the train station. Under it is shops. The cars are going down, so you can pass the station without having cars in the way. So the whole ground floor is now pedestrian airways, walkway, and you can walk in the station directly to the water. The water taxis that go to the other side of the water also enter under this roof, and the new subway line that we also are responsible for is constructed under the station. So by adding this one vaulted roof as a kind of echo or a renewing of the old station, we are able to give this station a new, better working, machine-like character. You see the open side of the roof to the water, where the water buses and taxis go under it. And you see here a 3D image of what it is, and it's under construction now again. Here without the roof, here you come up from the shopping center and you see a little nice space where the bus drivers can rest. Also here, I think this is one of the nicest buildings we did. It's just a cylinder and it rests on the stairs, and that's it. So the simpler we get it, the projects get bigger, but the simpler the solutions, the nicer we think they are. And here is the structure of the roof. We've put Amsterdam on it, so if you didn't know it, that you were there, it's on the roof. That's nice for PR reasons when you have photographs from the air, that you can really show it. But here you see that the middle section is not there, because this subway line still is constructed under it. And the nice thing is here that you can do it so slender, and we use two techniques. We used this bended steel, and we used cold bended glass on top of it. And it's so thin, it's only a couple of millimeters, but you can walk on it. So that's the nice thing of progressing with your technique. You can make your idea just as you want to make it, and then give it its character. Rotterdam Central is almost finished. This was the old station with a very narrow transport way under the tracks, very low visibility, so when there was one train you wouldn't see the others. Of course you still have that, but you also didn't have a sense of how big the station behind it was. It's near the center of Rotterdam, which was bombarded in the war of 45, completely empty, and it is a kind of new city center that, in view of many people, hasn't a real city center. So we used the front hall of the station to guide the people to where they have to be. So by the shape of the roof and having it shaped into the direction of where people have to be, we wanted to make a new connection between the station and the city. And also we wanted to solve this problem that you can see where you are in the station when you're on the tracks and what happens. So here is the form that we did to show that it's an asymmetrical route you have to take to the city. Now we started constructing by digging holes and lifting the steel structure. Here the structure is done by the contractor, so it isn't basically, because in the end result you will not see the structure. It's not as elegant as you would have designed it when you would have an external steel structure. So here it's basically the idea of this roof that's more important, and then the structural engineer goes his way, and you see this, there's a lot of steel, but it's basically not beautiful. The roof is, and it shows what you have. Here we use this very thin sheet of stainless steel to cover it, and you see that it works as a form in the city, and it guides you to the left open side of the city. Also these track roofs were removed, the old ones on the right, new bridge over it on the left, and a completely covered glass roof on top of it with nice structural elements that change direction. These I-shaped columns change direction, you go under them and they lift the roof in the other way. A lot of photovoltaic cells to use the energy in the right way, and you get a beautiful, nice space where also the shade of it coming from above is helping you to see in what time of the day you're in the station. And we covered, at the end, covered all the steel with wood to make it less technical. The last project that I will show you is the Contemporary Art Museum in Amsterdam that we just extended and renewed. This was what it looked in 1895. It's on the museum square. On top you see the Rijksmuseum that was recently restored and opened. In the middle, with the egg-shaped building, is the Van Gogh Museum. And at the bottom left is our Stedelijk Museum with the extension. You can recognize the museums by the roof shape because of the top lights, so you can always recognize an old museum by the top lights, and you can see from far that's a museum. So we did that with the extension of the old building also. You see it here before we started constructing. You see these roofs that you can recognize as a museum. You see that a lot of building was around it, and you see that on the right side the Van Gogh Museum made a kind of closed impression to this museum square. Our idea, the museum had its entrance on the other side of this picture. Our idea was to turn the museum completely around and give it an entrance on the museum square on the south side, and also add a part of the museum square to the museum square. So not build the site completely full. This was our program that we had to build. 2 stories completely full. And what we did is we cut away all the space that we could cut away on the ground floor. So the museum square now continues to the old facade of the old building, and we made a lifted volume on top of it, and the rest of the program we sunk into the ground. So that you get a kind of public space that really has to do with interior and exterior, and being able to go into the museum very easily without hardly noticing that you go from the outside and the inside. On the square, under the lifted volume, we have all the functions that are not exhibition. So tickets, codes, books, eating, everything is in a small strip attached to the old building. Then the square and the material of the square goes on from outside to inside, so it's a kind of in-between space. You see it here under the expositie that you see. And we made a very big canopy of 12 meters span over it in the front, so the space under it is covered from the sun and can be completely of glass, and it also makes a very nice space to be in when the weather is a bit worse. It also helps you to be able to project films on the outside of the building and to provide shade for filming. Also here, digging into the holes, into the ground in the Netherlands is quite difficult because we have water. Everything below 2.5 meters is water underground, so you have to basically build underwater. And on top of that we put this steel structure that consists of several elements. The red bead that you see is just a simple bridge structure to make a 65 meter span, to keep the plaza under the building as open as possible. And so it's a very heavy bridge, so the building will not move. And then you have substructures to mount your facade on, and in the in-between space all the air ducts of the museum can be. So the outside is not completely straight, and the inside, the walls are, of course, because of the paintings, are just straight. So the building is constructed as a heavy piece of furniture on the plaza next to the old building. And here in this case you see the canopy that really ends in a 12 centimeter height end to make it as thin as possible. Here the steel is important, but it's in the end phase of the building it's not important, because we looked for a material that would get rid of the whole discussion between old and new architecture. By looking at materials out of other industries, we tried to create an entrance and not an old building and a new building. This canopy is basically what shows that you have to enter the new museum. You enter the space where you can have all your services, and then you go into the museum. So we wanted the material that really makes this idea work. So it was produced in a sandwich element of resin with reinforced aramid, and that's a fiber that's used in weapon protective system, in hockey sticks, in other kinds of sports, in sports yards, masts. So it's the most strong and light material that you can have. So it's even stronger and lighter than steel. That's what makes it nice for us here. We go on. So we use the steel inside to make everything secure, and we cover it with this very flushy material that really shows you that this is the entrance to the museum. It's open now for 1 year. You see here the plaza with the bookshop that continues from inside to outside. In the evening time you can look under the volume and see the old building as it was in 1895 with this piece of extension in front of it. You see that the line of the roof of the old building is continued in the new roof that really hangs over. And you see that on the top of the building these light structures to get daylight into the museum, because in this volume is of course new exhibition space with top light from above is a theme that continues from old to new. It's like this central station. You have the old building and the new building is a new way of interpretation of the setting idea. So here's some ant images, and we ant in the snow because it's so cold here today. Thank you very much.